Yeah, so I am here to help give you that confidence so that you can believe that customers will be able to show up on any e-commerce site that you control and actually complete an order and open up their wallets and give up some of their money. The case that I'm trying to make is that you should be testing everything. And I'll define what everything means, but it's, if you've ever heard the word before, it's all inclusive. There are lots of things to test. I'll give you some specific examples. And if you don't want to test everything, that's okay, because you can just keep doing what you're doing, which is essentially burning the piles of money that you would otherwise be making. So we have a lot to cover. First of all, I want to talk about why bother testing anything. Why should you even care about this? At least you care a little bit because you're here. Otherwise, you'd be in one of the other rooms. So thank you for showing up. Then we'll go into what to test, some tools that you can use to do the testing, and then I'll give you some pointers on where to start and a bunch of resources to keep you going after this. Because testing is an enormous topic, and we could spend hours upon hours just on one kind of testing. So I'm basically going to give you a drive-by, surface-level look at all of the stuff that you can test and things that you can use to do your tests. And I'm here to help. So if you get stuck on this, like if you want to actually start testing, which is my goal, right? If I succeed, you're going to want to test all of the things, and you get stuck or you have questions, you're not sure what to do, find me at any point during this conference. Stop me and start talking to me. I'm definitely here for that. We might have time for questions at the end of this. I hadn't really timed out all of my stuff. I added a bunch of stuff last minute last night, so that might put me just beyond time. So if we don't have time for questions, that's okay. You can bring them to the Slack channel. So if you go to wooconf.com/Slack, you can join that. Or you can tweet me. My Twitter handle is on every single slide. Or you can find me anywhere throughout the conference and just stop me and ask me any questions you have. And I might know the answer to them. Maybe. I'm really good at Googling if I don't know the answer. So why should you even bother testing? Like, let's get the big question out of the way first. I can give you a dozen reasons at least, right? Maybe you want to increase your average ticket price, or you want to attract more leads to your website, or you want to reduce cart abandonment, or you want to increase your monthly recurring revenue. But I imagine most of all you want to reduce churn and eliminate downtime and make sure that customers can actually successfully complete an order. And this is true whether you're a developer or a shop owner. This is probably especially true if you are a developer, because you think very clearly about the code that you need to write, and you're very focused and very good about doing that, and tend to ignore or gloss over all of the other business aspects of what you do to be in business as a developer, whether you're an independent contractor or working within an agency. Even when you're just part of a team, you should still be selling yourself and what you do and how you do it to further benefit your role in the team, to further benefit the team for having you on it, and to further benefit your clients for hiring your team, right? So there's lots of good reasons to test, and lots of different things that come out of that testing. But ultimately, the goal of testing is to help you identify and eliminate all of the places that the business is burning money. And there are a lot. This is why people spend years getting a degree in business, to figure out all of the different ways that a business could burn money, and then show up and to help them stop that. To find the people who are actively shoveling money into the furnace, saying, no, stop doing that. We need that money to pay for other things. And you don't have to take my word for it. There are a lot of people who are much smarter than me, and I reached out to some of them to give me some testimonies. So Syed Balki, he runs Awesome Motive, which is a company you might not have heard of, but you may have heard of WP Beginner, or Opt-in Monster, or a whole bunch of other incredible products that Awesome Motive is responsible for. Some time ago, he and the team thought, we really hate PayPal. We hate working with it. Their API is challenging. Let's get rid of it. But let's not just cut it loose. Let's test that. Let's see how much better we do without it. And their profits, their revenue, dropped 20% almost immediately. And they realized, maybe we don't hate PayPal. Maybe we just need to become more familiar with all of its pain points and work around those. And they decided, after their sales dropped 20%, to keep PayPal on their sales page, and everything has been hunky-dory ever since. This was a while ago. PayPal has since improved things a lot. If you were a developer who worked with PayPal like 5, 10 years ago, you know it's a nightmare. If you go to work with it now, they have lots more documentation to help you through a lot of problems. So take that for what it's worth. Chris Lemma suggests that if you want to create a coupon code, it's probably because you want it to A, work, and B, you want it to generate more sales. But if you don't test the performance, it may do neither. Don't use hope as a strategy. Test everything. Some context behind this, a client that he and I worked with does a massive amount of sales, and they were offering coupons to first-time customers for joining their mailing list, or after completing their first order, you get a coupon for your next order. And that was actually one of the things that brought their site down a couple of years ago, because one coupon had been used so many times and generated so many meta records in the database that one person tried to use it one day, and everything else sort of collapsed around that because queries couldn't finish, and it was creating a terrible backlog. So sometimes you even need to test just that a coupon will work and find ways to make sure that you can keep testing that so that on that eventful day when some person goes to use it, that the whole site doesn't come crashing down. Corey Miller was kind enough to give me this. He said that business is just one big test, but he prefers the word experiments. 10 years in doing this, I know that if we were to stop experimenting, pushing out new products, or trying new pricing and packaging, et cetera, is the time we start our descent. He had a mountain of things that I was able to extract this one thing from. And another thing that he said that I really loved was that he currently strives to make the least expensive mistakes possible because he's had a number of very expensive lessons. And so when testing things, he likes to test things that won't fail quite so big. Another way of thinking of this is that mistakes burn money, and testing prevents mistakes. So if you hate burning money, you should love testing things. If you hate making mistakes, then you should really relish the fact that there are tests here to back up what you're doing. So let's talk about what we can test, now that we know why. So imagine for a moment that you own a restaurant. Forget about your current business. Just think about all of the things that go into owning a restaurant and operating a restaurant, and all of the different touch points that you have as an owner, all the different touch points that your employees have, all the different touch points for your customers, for prospects. Right? Even just in the simple cross-section of this very simplified restaurant, there are dozens of things we could pick apart. Starting with the front of house, right? Your curb appeal, your marketing. How do we get people into the restaurant in the first place? In the world of digital marketing, this might mean your ad copy or your presence on social media and what you're putting out there so that people can find you to land inside your restaurant. Right? It's how you position yourself compared to other restaurants. Why should they walk into yours instead of the one that's right across the street or further down the road? How are you presenting and carrying your business? There are so many things that you could test just in that facet. And then we get inside. Right, we've got the foyer, or in this case, it's just a fast food restaurant. So really all we have is a dining area that people are walking through until they get to the counter. And this is where they make so many of their first impressions with your business. Is this place clean? Is it loud? Is it family-friendly? Are the customers here people that I'd feel comfortable dining with? Are the staff helpful? Are there any guided tours so they know where to walk, where to stand, where to look, what to order? What's the ambiance like? Is it loud? Is it cold? Is that too hot? Overall, what is the experience of being a customer in this restaurant? Is what's happening in the general dining area or in the waiting area. Then they get to the counter. This is where they make their purchase, ideally, right? This is the point of sale. How easily can they navigate the menu? Can they even see the menu? Do they know where to look? Are there too many things on the menu, too few things on the menu? Can they find what they want? Is the pricing right? Do you have a dollar menu? Do you have a $10 menu? Do you have a 10-cent menu? For the record, don't order anything off a 10-cent menu if any restaurant ever tries that. I promise that neither you nor they will come out better for it. What's the transaction experience like? Is it very frustrating? Is the person who's operating the controls having a hard time? Is the credit card failing? Can they only pay in cash? Do they need to prove 2 forms of identification in order to complete this order? And then we get to the back of house, the kitchen, where all the stuff is getting made. This is where we think through your process. How long does it take for you to make a hamburger? Are people colliding as they're walking around? Is information getting lost? Did what the person at the counter take down get misrepresented when they're making the food in the kitchen? Is the correct order going to come back out to the customer at the other end? What's the customer wait time like? How long does it take from when they place their order until they get that? Is that commensurate with what they're expecting? Right, at a fast food place, they're probably expecting a 2 to 3 minute turnaround. At a sit-down restaurant, they're probably expecting a 20 to 30 minute turnaround. How does your service compare to that? When they come to your website, they're expecting immediate load times. Does it take a half a second, full second, 6 full seconds, 10 full seconds? Have they abandoned all hope and went to one of your competitors? Odds are pretty good that they may have. And then inside your kitchen, we have all of the tools and the equipment, the resources that are available to you, the raw material that you're bringing in to make the food, right? This is where we start thinking through all of the efficiency of your processes. Are you throwing out food because you ordered too much stock and couldn't use it all? Are you throwing out food because orders are getting messed up? Are you creating bottlenecks because you've got all of the buns for the hamburgers on one side of the kitchen and all of the patties being cooked on the other, and now when you want to put them together, someone has to walk back and forth across the kitchen a bunch of times to make each hamburger? What are the pain points in here for you and your staff? What are the missed opportunities, either for making things more efficient or for providing better value? Maybe your prices could be lower if it didn't cost you so much money to get the raw materials or to convert those raw materials into what the customer was actually ordering. And then so many different intangibles that are all part of the business but aren't easily represented, at least not in this diagram. Things like your staff, the product that you're actually producing, how you're delivering that product, how things are getting delivered to you. This feeds back into the customer experience again, but it also has to deal with employee morale, with how you pick your packaging. How do you actually package up the stuff that you're making? Is that part of the experience that you consider? Or do you just throw the hamburger at the plate from across the kitchen, plate gets thrown out to the customer, hopefully everything is still there when it's in their hands? An aside, have you ever noticed how beautiful hamburgers from McDonald's look in their billboards compared to what they actually are when you open the case? I got to study this as a photographer, and there are lots of rules and laws around what they can show you in those photographs. So it is actually the same ingredients that they use in their real restaurant, but not necessarily prepared the same way. They have to give you the exact same portions as well. But if you look carefully at the photos of the food that they're serving and those burgers that are just exploding with ingredients, if you look to the back, you'll notice that the buns are like tilting backwards because there's nothing back here. Everything's at the very front of the burger, so you can see all of the meat, all of the cheese, all of the lettuce, all of the everything. And it's probably only been cooked for about 30 seconds instead of the actual cook time so that they can get it glistening and just right. I promise never to use that word in regards to a McDonald's hamburger again. But you get the point, right? They really care about the showmanship of what they're producing when they're putting it on their billboard. They don't care so much when they're trying to get it out to you as fast as possible so that they can move on to serve the next order. What in your business is like that, where you've packaged this amazing experience, and then what you actually deliver is just where they're not going to come back, right? Those are the kinds of things you need to be cognizant of, that you should be testing, that you should be thinking through and working through so that what you actually deliver is at least as good as or better than what was advertised. And what was advertised is as good as or better than what they wanted, so that people will show up, come for what you have, and then be very glad that they got it in the end. Other things to consider here, right? Pricing, once again, are we charging too much or too little? How's our timing? Are we taking too long? Are we not taking long enough? Maybe we deliver things way too fast, which is almost never the problem, but theoretically it could be, right? And one result of perhaps delivering something too fast is people question, is this actually that valuable? I just spent $1,000 for you to create this report for how my website is performing, for instance, and you turned it back to me in 10 minutes, which is great, I can look at it, but now I'm questioning, how much did you actually do on this? Is this actually your work, or are you just paying someone else $100 to give me this report, and you're pocketing $900, right? How you handle things, how you package things, how you prepare those for your customers are all things that matter. And then when we zoom back out and look at the restaurant as a whole, is this even the business you want to be running? You're running a fast food restaurant. Maybe you want a sit-down, family-style experience. Or maybe you want a restaurant, but in a completely different subclass of food, right? There are so many things we could nitpick, right? Like the color of the tile and the color of the logo and how big the logo is and all of these things that ultimately might not matter, but they might matter a lot. And there's only one way to know that for sure, and that's not to just assume that it doesn't matter or that it does matter a lot. It's to actually sit down and test things and quantify. How much does this matter? Do my customers actually care about this thing? Does this change the experience? Does this increase my conversion, decrease my conversion? Does this repel customers from my business or attract more to it? So to break all of this down into a context that actually matters to you and your business, let's think about some of the things that we can test in the real world. The first thing, the most important thing that most business owners think of are their decisions and their assumptions. You don't think to test these necessarily, or you do think to test these, but you think to test the wrong thing. So decisions and assumptions, these are things like your marketing copy. This is what we are going to say about ourselves to our audience. Is that the right thing to say? Is that how your audience understands the problem? Are you telling them just a feature of what you're doing, or are you actually giving them a benefit? Right? It's bad form, and if you're a developer, this might be the first time you're hearing it, or the 100th time you're hearing it, but you haven't taken action on it. But it's bad form to sell people on the features of what you've produced. They don't care necessarily what version of PHP your plugin supports. They don't care that it has this particular reporting interface in it. They do care that they can get a complete analysis of their average lifetime value for a customer in under 3 seconds and get on with the other part of running their business. So sell them on the benefits of what they get from working with you or using your product, not on the features that it has. So there's just one thing that we can test with our marketing offer and our sales copy. There's also pricing and positioning, right? Pricing is a big deal. How much is my thing worth? How much are people willing to spend on this? Somebody might be willing to spend $100. Somebody might be willing to spend $100,000, right? If we're talking about selling a service, a piece of code to a local business versus selling that same thing to an enormous conglomerate. They have a different value scale that they're working with, and it would behoove you to be aware of what that is and to ask good questions and to test different things. If someone says, yes, I'll take it, the moment the price has escaped from your lips, or even before the price has escaped from your lips, chances are you lost some money because they would have been willing to pay more. If you say, oh yeah, I just made this widget, it's $100, I'm in, how can I get it right now? If you say, I just made this widget and it's $1,000, and they go, $1,000, I don't know. Like if they have to pause and consider it before they say yes, you're getting in the ballpark of the right price. And if they come back and say, like, no, that's just too much for us, good news, you found just where it's too high to charge. And you go, I see. Well, what if we packaged up this for you at a slightly lower rate? And they go, yeah, that's actually just the right size. You'll almost always have an opportunity to give someone a lower price if you start out by giving them a price that's too high. You'll almost never have a chance to give them a higher price if you give them a price that's too low. So start high and negotiate yourself down. Don't start low and negotiate yourself up. Discounts and coupons, upsells and cross-sells are all ways of promoting your products, right? Do you want to be a business that sells something that's $1,000, but there's always a discount so they can get it for $800? Or do you want to be a business that just sells things for $800, and that's always the price, no matter where you are or what time of year it is? Some of this matters, right? If you are Coach and you sell purses, your clients, your customers probably aren't the people who are shopping around for the best possible deal. And so constantly promoting that your stuff is discounted would drive your intended customer away. But if you're somebody like JCPenney's and you go, we're not going to do discounts or sales anymore, the price is just the price and we offer the lowest price every day, your main customer base, who is actively shopping for a deal, is going to actively shop somewhere else. And then you'll have to double back and go, yeah, this was a bad idea. We are going to start offering sales and discounts again, which is a thing that actually happened, if you're unaware. And if you're not from the US, JCPenney's is a clothing retailer. They sell a bunch of other stuff. But several years ago, the person in charge said, I'm tired of having sales and doing all this stuff. It's a big hassle. We're just going to always offer the lowest possible price, except that their entire customer base, until that point, had been conditioned on, yeah, if you wait until this date, there's a 20% discount. If you check your mailbox, there might be another 15% discount. And 3 months after that, you'll probably get another one. And all of the other businesses kept doing that, so all the customers stopped shopping at JCPenney's and started shopping there, and then JCPenney's had to roll back on their plan and start offering discounts again. The interesting thing about discounts is you can still get whatever price you want, right? If your goal is to have something where the average ticket price is $800, and you want people who love shopping for deals to get a deal, you list it for $1,000, and you offer them an immediate $200 discount, and now the thing is $800. You get the original price that you were looking for, they get the deal that they were hunting for, and they're both happy. You're both happy. I'm not suggesting that you lie to your customers or your clients. I'm just suggesting that you think through the experience that people want to have. People love getting a deal. I love getting a deal. It's also really useful if you do sort of pro bono work or offer donations. Right? I worked with a lot of nonprofits throughout the years, and early on, I would just say, there's no cost. It's free. But the problem is when you give somebody something for free, it's not valuable. There is no value there. You're like, yeah, here's this thing. I didn't find any value in it. I'm guessing you probably won't either. Or the other thing that happens is you'll get taken advantage of, and they'll go, oh, yes, can I also have this and this and this and this? And so what I started doing is I started showing them, here's what this costs when I do it commercially. But for you, I'm giving you a 100% discount. So you're getting $10,000 worth of services for $0. That does two things. One, it establishes that this is valuable and they should really appreciate what they're getting. And two, they're actually likely to use it because it has some value to them. It's the same reason why WordCamps have a $20 ticket price. It's not because they need your $20 to throw the camp. In fact, the entire collection of tickets for a WordCamp is usually enough to pay for maybe the t-shirts that everybody gets to have. It's to make sure you actually show up and participate, because if the ticket was free, everybody would sign up and nobody would come. So, one thing to test with pricing. How about performance and availability? I asked early on how many of you were certain that your website was online. Some of you may have been certain because you're using a tool like Pingdom to let you know the moment it goes offline. Some of you trust that your hosts will inform you that you have downtime because that's one of the things that they offer to tell you as part of their service agreement. Sometimes they don't inform you quite so quickly. Just saying. Not every host does that. And oftentimes it's good to have redundant services. So even if a host is going to tell you, hey, your website's offline, we're working on it, it's good to have someone else verifying that. Hey, your site went offline last night for an hour. Did you know? Did your host know? Did anybody tell you? Performance is a big deal. Can your site actually sustain the traffic that you're going to send to it? Going back to the coupon example from earlier, the client in question there would routinely say, we've got a new product on our site. They had a rabid fan base who would show up and just slam the servers, and the site would go down. And so we worked with them to find all sorts of ways to cache things or get rid of things that were impossible to cache so that they were inaccessible during these launches and sales so that the site could stay online to serve all of their traffic. And we had a good benchmark of how many customers we could support because we were using tools to hit the servers with, I think the biggest we did as a test was 12,000 concurrent users hammering the site, adding items to cart, and making sure that the site remained responsive through the whole ordeal. Because this particular site was dealing with something in the realm of 2,000 add to cart requests per minute. Sometimes, when you're testing things, you have to come up with your own metrics for how to quantify and measure the data. In that case, that became our metric, because adding a product to the cart was something that we could not cache, and something that was happening a lot, and something we had to make sure, when this happens, can people still make it through to checkout and complete an order? So rather than measuring orders per second or number of visitors who can participate on the site, we wanted to know how many people can actively put things in their cart at one time, and for how long before things start to fall apart. And it was a great success. Other things to consider with performance and availability. How quickly does your site load? How quickly does it load on mobile? Have you really tested that, or have you used just the browser testing tools? Do you have a device lab where you're actually testing the loading in the devices that matter to you in your business? For some people, that just means like the most current release of the most popular devices, right? iPhone, iPad, Samsung Galaxy S8, etc. But you need to be sure what matters to you, what traffic is coming to the site. Let's test for that and make sure that their experience is as optimal as possible. Especially for mobile, because mobile is eating the world. You've all seen stats. I'm not going to repeat them here, but the majority of traffic online now is coming from mobile. The majority of sales for sites that have planned for this are on mobile. So if you have a customer come to you saying, I don't think we really need to worry about mobile because it's only 20% of our business. Maybe it's only 20% of your business because you don't care too much about optimizing for mobile, and you could have 80% more business if you made that a priority. Again, you can't know that unless you test. Maybe you really only do have 1 in 5 visitors in your audience have a mobile device and choose to use that to visit your site. I'm going to guess that there are more people, but running tests, small-scale tests to sort of sniff that information out is a good way to know we should care about this mobile traffic or we shouldn't. We should care about making this experience mobile-friendly or we shouldn't. We should not include this library because it adds an extra second of page load on mobile, and that is going to drive away 10% of our sales. Checkout flow. How's that work? Do people actually make it to the end? Do you have anybody abandoning their carts? Can they get the product in their cart, get to checkout, get through the end, get an order confirmation email, and feel confident that you charged their account and only did it once, or not at all if it's, say, just a like an early bird reservation thing? Right? What sort of things are you giving to the visitor so that they know, I'm at this stage of the checkout process, now I'm at this stage, I have one more left. How many clicks does it take from I want this to I have this? There are tons of things that we can test in checkout flow. The two that I want to point out at the bottom here, how many emails does a visitor get when they check out on your site as a brand new customer? I'm guessing it's more than you thought of if you haven't actually tested that. And then of those, how many of those are an actual inviting welcome message from you, the shop owner? Are any of them? Is the warmest you get in greeting these people, thanks for your order, here are the details below? Because if that's it, I would encourage you to start testing there and see how much more engagement you can get from those initial points of contact via email just by changing up what emails they get. I'm a bad actor on this. If you end up signing up on WP Sessions, you will see that you will get at least 2 emails, one for having registered an account on my WordPress site and one for completing an order. You might get a third one, depending on how that order process, completion process works, of saying, like, thank you for your order, and then a follow-up one almost soon after saying, your order is complete. But usually you're getting 1 or 2. If you're a new customer, you get 1, as I said, for signing up, and then for completing your order. If you're a repeat customer, you get just thank you for your order. But I don't have a welcome email. That's actually the very first thing I'm going to be working on after this, because I did a deep introspective analysis when I was putting these slides together and went, I'm not doing this thing. I'm probably losing out on a lot of opportunities by not saying, hey, thank you for your order. By the way, have you seen these other things that we do on this site? Could you tweet about this? Could you tell me how you found the site? Can I give you a gift? Right? There's lots of opportunities to engage with the customer and get them to come back, or to get them to be a fan to tell their friends about what you do. Software and devices. This one matters mostly for the developers in the room. If you're not a developer, don't tune out, because you will care about this to want to make sure that the team you hire does care about this. Odds are they think that you don't care about this and don't want to pay for this, which is why you're not getting it. And when you show up and say, I do care about this, please do bill me for this because I do want to know that my stuff works, they'll go, that's amazing. I would love to offer you all of my testing services and make sure beyond the shadow of a doubt that this will work always. But nevertheless, do all of the features that you've completed behave the way that they should? Do the individual pieces of code that power those features behave the way that they should? Has anything that you've released in the last 6 months broken the thing that you were sure worked 6 months ago? Are you sure it didn't break? Did you test every single aspect of this site when you pushed out that one change to the calendar widget? Because you might not have realized that one of the functions in that calendar widget was also used in the calendar listing page somewhere else in the site, and now that's broken. And you email the customer to say, hey, good news, calendar widget's all fixed. And they email you back and you're like, great, we're getting lots of errors on our calendar list page. Do you know anything about those? That's just a hypothetical. I've never had anything like that happen. And how about all of the devices? We talked about this a moment ago, but do all of the devices that you say you're covering in your statement of work actually work perfectly? Or do some of them not work? If you had tests, you would know. You'd be able to say, yes, all of these devices work, at least according to the testing software. And then if there's a bug, it's not because you didn't necessarily do your due diligence. It's because something changed that was outside of your control. And now you can go and fix that one thing instead of wondering, like, are other things broken? What other things did we forget to test? Accessibility is a big deal. Most people don't treat it as a big deal. I'm in the camp who, for a long time, didn't treat it as a big deal. It's a big problem to have an inaccessible website. Depending on what industry you're in, it could be a finable offense. A very sizable fine, by the way. Not only that, like, it's just good to build things that everybody can use, right? So the first and easy question here is, does your site meet compliance requirements? And if your question to that is, what are the compliance requirements for my site? You have some research to do, and I have some links later that can help you do that research to figure out if your site meets compliance requirements. But the other thing is, can the visitors who depend on assistive tech actually complete an order? Do they get stuck somewhere along the way? Can they find the item that they're looking for in your shop? I'm highly confident that the checkout form works because that's been tested a bunch of different ways. But maybe yours doesn't because you changed something about the layout and stripped out, unintentionally I'm sure, some important piece for making the site accessible. Maybe your catalog page doesn't actually list any of the product titles. It just has a thumbnail for everything. And that's okay because the thumbnail shows what the product is. But if you can't see the thumbnails, then you don't actually know what any of the products are. Full disclosure, that was my site when I first launched WP Sessions, and I was about 6 sessions in. I only had a thumbnail that was the title slide of whatever the session was, and no text to say, this is the blank session. So anyone who couldn't see the screen could only see that I had 6 products that were all $19 and not know what any of them are until they clicked on each one to get to the page. Really dumb stuff. Really easy stuff to miss when you have eyes and are just blowing past, like, yep, that looks good, move on. Really easy things to catch when you have tools in place to check you and say, hey, wait a minute, you just broke something here. Nobody can actually see what's on this page or hear what's on the page because there's no text. So what do we use? How do we actually test all of these things, right? There's lots of things to test. How do we go through and do that? Well, good news, testing has become so much easier in recent years. Unless you're a developer, things still suck for you. I'm sorry. There are some things that make it better. But generally speaking, testing across the board has gotten easier and better. And there's never been a better time to start testing your stuff than yesterday. Unless you don't have a time machine, in which case it's today. The best time to start is today. So let's talk about split testing first. There are tons of things out there that were built specifically for split testing decisions. And depending on the tools that you use, they even have things within them for split testing things. For instance, Google AdWords has the ability to split test individual ads that you're running. And you just do that in their platform rather than finding some other random tool that integrates with Google AdWords. For testing your website, for split testing any part of it, to test one page versus another, one headline versus another, I would recommend that you either use Optimizely or Google Analytics Optimize. There are other much more expensive tools out there. Adobe has one called Test and Target. At least that's what it used to be. It may have changed its name in recent history. Odds are, if you need something like that, you're in the enterprise space dealing with a huge volume, and there's somebody on your team already who has used it or is using it, and you're just not in the loop. But for everything else, Optimizely and Google Analytics Optimize, formerly, I can't remember what they used to call it, doesn't matter, are free and very easy to set up. Optimizely especially. You add a tracking script to your site, and then it's ready to go. Google Analytics Optimize, you probably already have the tracking script in place because it piggybacks off of Google Analytics. So there's nothing extra for you to add to the site. There's just extra stuff for you to do to set up the tests. I personally like Optimizely better because their interface is just so slick. And it used to be that you had to pay for it. And then they realized that the real money is at the upper end of the market. So if you have anything less than, I think it's 100,000 visitors per month or fewer, it's totally free, which totally meets my needs. It's point and click. It's almost like a visual layout editor, which if you ever tried to use one of those, you know that they are both awesome and terrible. This one's generally more on the awesome side, and it means that anybody can set up a test, even if it's a non-technical person. So if you've got somebody in marketing who wants to test things, you can set this up and give them the tools and say, all right, you set up any tests. Anything that wins that requires me to change something on the site, you just let me know. I'll make the change for the winning variant, which is pretty cool. Quick note, some bad things to test that you might think are important, things like the color of your buttons, or perhaps the specific wording of your headline are not great tests. But the positioning statement of your headline is a great thing to test. What the button says is a great thing to test. Do we get more conversions when it says learn more or when it says buy now? Do we get more conversions on a membership site when it says join now or when it says become a member? Those are interesting things to test. The caveat with A/B split tests, and I don't usually recommend these, which is why I'm leading with it, is that you need a lot of traffic to reach statistical significance on your decision. You might see that something has a 4% lift, but only like a 0.4% confidence on that lift, which means like of the 20 people you put on it, 4 more, or I'm not going to do the math for you, on the stage and look like an idiot, but some more people picked option A than option B. Option A is obviously better. Like, well, no, option A was better for like 2 people out of 20. That's not a very good data sample size. But if you're throwing like thousands of people at a test, you can reach statistical significance more quickly. So be cautious as you're testing things. If it's like close, like if it's within single-digit percentages, you need a lot of confidence from the tool to know that you need to make a change. These are really good for testing things that are like a blowout. Like everybody who sees this version buys and nobody who sees this one. Well, obviously you want to pick this version. You don't need to keep running that test to know that this one was a dud. For performance and uptime, Pingdom is a long fan favorite for just knowing, is my website still online? They will ping it every whatever interval you choose, and then if it's ever offline, they will let you know. And then when it comes back online, they will let you know again. And then you can know, hey, my website was offline for 6 minutes. What's the deal? BlazeMeter is a brilliant tool for doing performance testing. It's built on top of a tool that Apache made years ago called JMeter. And in effect, what you can do is record browsing the site as if you were an actual user of the site. I'm going here, I'm clicking on this, I'm doing this, I'm looking at this. And you can choose how much of that information to keep and run in the test. Like, how long were you sitting on the page before you clicked on that thing? So it can simulate real, true behavior of pauses, of scrolling, of things like that. This is what we used to simulate 12,000 active visitors trying to add as many things to their cart as possible. And then when you're doing things like this, don't just test the ideal happiness path from A to B, because customers rarely take that. Sometimes they do hit your homepage, hit the product, hit the cart, hit the checkout, and are done. Sometimes they hit the homepage, hit the product, hit the about page, hit the product, hit the homepage, hit another product, hit your about page again, add the product to their cart, go back and Google around on some things for a while, come back to your site, complete the order, go and look at their My Account page. And there are like 6 times as many pages in that experience than the one that you thought was worth testing. Like, start with a quick one, but then expand it out and simulate a real user. For instance, on the site that was collapsing before we did all of our performance tuning, we found out that it wasn't collapsing necessarily because 2,000 people were adding items to their cart. It was because the people who completed their order were going to the My Account page, which is 100% uncached data. And that brought in every order they'd ever placed, all of their personal contact information that the shop had, and then if they click on an order, all of the items that are in the order. There's so many different queries that have to run, or at least had to run at that time. They're getting better. And people doing that are the ones who were killing the site. So not the people who were trying to buy the thing, but the people who had already bought it and were just relishing in the fact that they had succeeded. Or not even that, right? Like, that's just one of the places they would get dumped at the end of the funnel. And so we did something very simple. We stopped allowing access to the My Account page while the sale was running and saying, thank you, our servers are experiencing high load. If your order was successful, you have gotten an order confirmation email. Please check back in an hour to view your account page. Their performance went way up, customer dissatisfaction went way down, and all it took was caching, or essentially turning off, a page in their site for an hour at a time on their massive launch days. Sometimes simple solutions come to very complicated problems. And it wasn't, we need to spend another $20,000 on servers stat to keep this thing online. It was just, turn off this page, everything works. Cool, I'm not gonna belabor that one. Accessibility testing. Site Improve is the preferred commercial tool. It sits on your site, can test a bunch of stuff, help you know about compliance issues and give you active feedback like this isn't meeting contrast requirements. You should consider 2 different colors here. A free alternative, which is open source and community supported, is Pally, P-A-1-1-Y, which is a whole collection of tools for helping you do accessibility testing on your site. Both are awesome. You could choose to use one or either or both. By the way, I forgot to mention this at the beginning. All of these resources are linked in the slides and linked on the page where you can find the slides. I had the link at the beginning. I'll have it again at the end. So if you miss anything, it's still there and you can go back to it. End-to-end testing. This is huge. This used to be so hard to do, and you could kind of fake it with a bunch of different things, or you could write your own custom Selenium scripts and create headless browsers and test things, and it was just, oh, so agonizing. Now there are tools like Ghost Inspector and Robot Ninja that can make end-to-end testing a breeze. Robot Ninja is one of the sponsors, brought to you by Prosperous, the same wonderful people who brought you subscriptions for WooCommerce. They are here today. You should talk to them. It is totally free to sign up. And this is just a sample. They will run all sorts of tests for you automatically with real transactions. So for that part, you actually do have to give them whatever amount your product costs. So that is held in your account. They run the transaction with your real money on an auto-generated card to make sure that the checkout process works. And then once they do, eject that money, refund it back so that it's in your account to run the test again indefinitely. Really cool. I was talking with them about this back in March. Like, okay, here's what I want to have in it. And then they built it. And now it's amazing. So you should go check out Robot Ninja. Ghost Inspector can do that. A bit more work to try and get it to do what Robot Ninja does. In fact, you wouldn't be able to get it to do the real transactions. But it does other things. So you'll want to use both. Ghost Inspector is really cool, in particular for visual regression. So has anything changed about the look of my website? They offer a bunch of different verbs for describing what their kind of testing is. It's all just really end-to-end testing with just another verb in there and how you choose to frame it. But you can have it take screenshots as you're going. You can have it test whatever you record, a lot like BlazeMeter. You say, I want you to do these things in order, and I want you to do them at this interval. So it can just keep running forever. And if anything ever breaks, it can tell you, hey, your site doesn't work anymore. Why is that? Really neat. Then if you're a developer, there's tons of things that you can use for code testing. I gave an entire talk last weekend just on this, like 40 minutes just on this. So for testing tools, we have PHP Unit for PHP, QUnit and Jasmine for JavaScript, Codeception and Behat for acceptance testing. So unit testing, to cover this really quickly, is testing a single piece of code, right? Like a single function does what it's supposed to do. Is often the misnomer in WordPress because almost all of the stuff we write has to depend either on a core function or on the database. And so really what we're running are integration tests. You may still have utility functions that you've made, and you can test those in isolation, and those are indeed true unit tests. But generally what you're writing when you're testing WordPress code is an integration test. Don't get hung up on the name. It doesn't matter. Write a test. Make sure your code works. Codeception and Behat for acceptance testing don't just test one thing. It tests everything together. So similarly, you pretend to be a user, and you say, I'm on this page. I click on this. I expect to see this. I fill in this form. I hit the submit button. I expect this to happen at the end. And if that ever doesn't happen, it says your test failed. You introduced some new code that broke this. Look at it, fix it. On the far right, we have continuous integration, which will take the tests that you've written in that middle column and run them every single time you submit code to your repo. Whether you're using GitHub or Bitbucket or GitLab or any hosted repository solution, you can have it automatically feed one of those tools. My current favorite is the one at the top, Circle CI. Because they've made a lot of improvements in 2.0, and it's totally free for both public and private repos. The catch is you can only have one concurrent test running at a time, which if you're a solo developer, it's fine. You can only be pushing one thing at a time anyway. But if you're on a team, and your tests, say, take 2 to 3 minutes to run beginning to end, things can sort of bottle up on the free plan. But their paid plans are super cheap and so totally worth it. Scrutinizer CI and CodeShip and other ones like that are really good if you like to be humbled and be reminded that you are not that great at writing code, because in addition to running your tests, they will also do static analysis on your code and be like, this seems a little too complex, or you've got this bit of code that would never get executed, so you don't need to have it in there, you dummy. And then they give you a grade just to really drive the point home, like this is C- quality work. And you'll spend a long time getting C-, and then you'll get a B, and you'll be like, oh, I finally broke through the barrier, and then you'll submit another code request, and it'll be a C- again, or a D. And they're very humbling and very good at helping you find things that your tests won't catch because you're not testing for those, because you're only testing for the ideal use cases. Test for the negative use cases as well. Make sure when you give your system unexpected data, it handles it properly. And then all the way over here on the left side, I've got just a couple of cool tools to reference. Specifically, I want to point out WC Cyclone. If you are writing extensions and you need to test random e-commerce sites routinely with lots of data in there, WC Cyclone is going to be your new favorite friend. It's a WP CLI command maintained by Bryce Adams, who created Metric, which is another very awesome tool. And you can say, I want to generate 100 new products and 1,000 orders and 10,000 customers. And whatever numbers you feed it, it will populate that so you have a fully stocked WooCommerce site to test all of your stuff against. Very awesome. PHP Code Sniffer, PHP Mess Detector are just other things to help you check out your code and make sure that it's not a terrible mess. And then we've got some other things for setting up your local development. If you're a developer, you're already using one of these. Quality web hosts. These folks have multiple environments. So you don't just have a production environment, you also have a staging environment and a dev environment in some cases, or maybe multiple dev environments. Liquid Web just released last week their managed WooCommerce offering, which is brilliant. They do performance testing for you automatically on their setup. They own all of their hardware, so they can do a lot of very cool stuff that other hosts can't. Pagely, WP Engine, honorable mentions, they're always fantastic. So a lot of good hosts out there. Some of them are here. So where do we start? I've got 19 seconds to blow through this. Start small, right? Don't think like, oh, I got to test all of these things right now. No, just like find something to test, like that email example I gave. Are any of your emails that customers get when they complete an order welcoming? No, fix that. Test a few different kinds of copy. See what kind of engagement you can get. Focus on your immediate needs. Do we know that our website is going to stay online all day, every day? No, that's an immediate need. You want to know that information. And then build momentum over time. Like start small and keep small and just keep working on things, and the snowball effect will take care of it. Right? You'll have 1,000 tests a year from now. Some small steps. Add uptime monitoring. Add one recorded end-to-end test. Right? Go to BlazeMeter, go to Ghost Inspector, go to Robot Ninja, and set up a test that makes sure your thing works from beginning to end once. And then turn it on to run all the time so you can know if that ever fails. Try adding a new call to action to your homepage or some new sales copy, test things like that. Medium step, conduct a performance test. Test your site accessibility. Test new pricing. Test across multiple devices. Add unit tests to your code. These aren't, the actual action of doing this thing isn't bigger than the smaller steps, but the result of this is likely going to be bigger. When you run those accessibility tests, you're going to realize, like, I need to change lots of things about my style sheet. That's not a small step. That's a medium step, right? New pricing is not just a small flippant decision, like, I'll test this at $19 and see. Like, you want to think through, like, what happens if we get a ton of customers at $19? Can we actually support those? We can't. Maybe we shouldn't run that test, even if it means getting 1,000 new people. And then some big steps. Add acceptance tests to your code so that you know all of your features work all of the time, every time you change something about the code base. Introduce complete testing automation, right? Set up Circle CI or Scrutinizer CI or Travis CI or any of the other CIs that you can think of. You only need one, by the way. Don't set up all of these CI tools. Like, just find one that you really like and try it. And if you realize that you hate it, throw it out and try another one. You're only out like a half an hour of config time because they all work almost the same. There you go. Some additional resources. I'm not going to just belabor these. I've got lots of articles that I collected, lots of videos, and more articles specifically on code testing. If you want to hear another 150 minutes of code testing training, this is a really good session that I hosted from some really smart people that key up, like, here's what PHP unit is and why you should care, and now let's use it to actually test our stuff. And, oh, by the way, you're writing lots of stuff in JavaScript, let's test that too. And then finally, if you like what I had to say, you'll definitely like what these people had to say, and you'll like the other 80-some hours of stuff that I have at wpsessions.com. The VIP membership gives you access to everything, and for this weekend, through Monday, you can get $100 off by going to wpsessions.com/WooConf. If you don't want it, that's okay. No hard sell. So let's recap. Mistakes burn money. Testing prevents mistakes. Add testing. Start small, focus on immediate needs, and build momentum over time. Thank you.